Welcome to the Office of Student Services Media Library, brought to you by your host, Mr. Pulliam.
Hey there, students, and welcome to another digital lesson from the Office of Student Services Media Library. Today we're going to talk a little bit about sexual harassment. This is the third video in our series that you had an option of opting out of if your parents did not want you to watch these. So at this time, if you opted out of these lessons, make sure you leave the room and then you can come back when we're done. Okay, I hope your teacher paused this video and gave the opt-out students some time to get out. So let's go ahead and get started. So before we get started, I want to say that there are multiple different types of harassment. So bullying, stalking, sexual harassment, racial, religious, sexual orientation harassment, disability harassment, cases of physical assault. These are all different ways that someone can be harassed, just so you kind of have an idea of what harassment means. So we're going to start off by talking about what is sexual harassment. So sexual harassment is repeated, unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, or other verbal and physical conduct of a sexual nature that constitutes sexual harassment. Now, sexual harassment also creates a hostile environment for individuals that inhibits them from working up to their fullest potential. And it also inhibits them from being comfortable or feeling safe where they are. So some facts about sexual harassment. The victim can be a boy or a girl. It is not specifically for girls, as boys can also be victims of sexual harassment. Also, the victim does not have to be of the opposite sex. So a harasser can harass someone of the same sex. A boy can harass a boy and a girl can harass a girl. So I just want you guys to remember that. It is possible to be harassed by your buddies. It's possible to be harassed by your girls. You just have to know what it is. And the harasser can be anyone. It can be someone you're comfortable with, someone you know, someone you don't know. It can be your best friend or your worst enemy. And you just have to be aware of that, okay? The victim does not have to be the person harassed, but could be anyone affected by the offensive conduct. So for example, if a coworker is harassing another coworker and constantly asking for sexual favors, and another coworker is constantly overhearing them, then that other coworker is also a victim of the sexual harassment because it's making them feel uncomfortable or unsafe in their work environment. Next, unlawful sexual harassment may occur with or without threats, monetary gain, and or fear. So these are some pretty common reasons and tactics that someone uses during sexual harassment, but they're not required. And I want you guys to remember that. And finally, the use of texting or DMing to spread sexual information or sexual rumors is considered sexual harassment. So if we go back to our sexting lesson, and we remember that I talked about a lot of times people are getting their nudes forwarded to other people without the original sender's permission. Not only is that illegal if they're under the age of 18, but it's also illegal because it's sexual harassment, and you can get charged with sexual harassment if that's the case. Next, you might be asking, what makes a hostile environment? Because we talked a little bit about a hostile environment earlier. So a hostile environment occurs when unwanted sexual touching, comments, and or gestures are so bad or occur so often that it interferes with someone's schoolwork, makes someone feel uncomfortable or unsafe where they are, and generally just prevents them from participating in activities or programs that might be beneficial to them. So for example, if someone is constantly sexually harassing you at school, you're not going to want to come to school, right? You're not going to want to go to that class. If they're an athlete or if they are a big time fan of sports or the band, you're not going to want to participate in those activities or even go to those games or go to those different programs. So remember that because it's important that you're creating an environment that is welcoming and supportive and not one that's hostile. Next, why do people harass others? You might be a person that has never even thought about sexually harassing someone. So you might not be able to understand why someone would even think about that. But there's some pretty common reasons. So harassment a lot of times is about demonstrating power and control over other people. It often occurs when someone has insecurities about themselves or have low self-esteem. Harassers use harassment to make themselves feel better while also bringing other people down and hurting other people's self-confidence. Individuals who harass others also, either sexually or in another way, want to feel like they're in control, want to feel like they're powerful and superior to other people. So if someone is a mean individual and wants to beat someone else down just for the heck of it, they use sexual harassment to do that. And also, sometimes people think it's cool to sexually harass people. Especially in middle school, people can say, oh, it's cool to say these mean things to someone. It's cool to ask for these things. But that's not the case. That is sexual harassment. It's really not cool. It's kind of the opposite of cool. It makes you look like a jerk, not like a cool person, whatever a cool person would be. And also, harassment can happen when what is deemed acceptable is not clearly communicated. So guys, going back to the consent video that we watched a couple videos back, it's important to remember that you need to clearly communicate consent, because not only sexual assault can happen, but also sexual harassment can happen, because a person might think that what they're doing is acceptable and wanted when it's not, because consent has not clearly been given or received. So just remember that. Next, what are the effects of harassment? So harassment can affect people in multiple different ways, but there are four main ones I want to talk about. So first, as I said earlier, when someone has low self-esteem, harassment is one of the ways they build their self-esteem up, but that also results in a decline in self-image or self-confidence or self-esteem of the victim. Also, the victim can have multiple physical symptoms like nausea, headaches, sleeplessness that are a result of the anxiety that comes with worrying when they're going to be harassed next or where they're going to run into their harasser. So the physical symptoms are more a result of anxiety, but the anxiety is a result and an effect of the sexual harassment. Next, people might skip class, school, work, or might just avoid places entirely in order to avoid their harasser and avoid the harassment. But this isn't healthy or safe for anyone because it inhibits them from participating in things and going places that they enjoy. And finally, there's feelings of shame, guilt, self-blame, depression, helplessness, anger that occur when harassment occurs because people feel like it's their fault, like it's something that they did or something that they can't control, which is not true, okay? You can control sexual harassment. There are things and steps you can take to prohibit it from happening, and I want you guys to remember that it's never your fault. In our society today, a lot of times when a female especially is sexually harassed or sexually assaulted, a lot of times people say, oh, she was asking for it. Look at what she was wearing. Look at what she was doing, how she was acting, what she was saying. That is never permission to sexually assault or sexually harass someone. Just because a girl or a boy wants to wear something a little more revealing, that doesn't mean she's doing it to attract the attention of the opposite sex. That means she's wearing it because she wants to wear it, because it makes her feel confident, not because a boy wants her to wear it. So remember that, boys and girls, in that case. What someone is wearing, they're not wearing for you, they're typically wearing for themselves, okay? And that is never a reason to sexually harass someone. Next, you might say, hey, Mr. Pulliam, I don't get why anyone would ever sexually harass someone, and I don't get why the victim wouldn't just go rat them out, why they wouldn't tell on them to make it stop. Well, about 75 to 80% of the time, they think it's just going to stop. They hope it's just going to stop if they ignore it. If they ignore it, they hope it's just going to go away. But that's rarely true, right? So when it doesn't stop, the victim has a fear that if they tell someone that no one's going to believe them, that they will say, oh, you're lying, that's not happening, so-and-so would never do that, or that they have to deal with repercussions from their peers. So I know that when I was younger, there was a friend who was sexually harassed, and they were afraid to tell anyone because they didn't want their peers to think that they were okay with it. They didn't want their peers to think that they had consented to it, and they didn't want them to judge them for it. And that's true for a lot of victims of sexual harassment and sexual assault. So I want you guys to remember that it's never your fault, okay? That if one of your friends comes to you and says, hey, this person has been sexually harassing me for a while now, and I really don't know what to do, show them love and kindness. Don't show them judgment, okay? And also, victims have a fear that nothing will be done about the situation, even if they do tell someone, or that they're going to get blamed for it. Remember how I talked about earlier, how a lot of times in society, people blame people's actions, words, dress for what happens to them. And so they have a fear that that's going to happen if they come forward and are honest, which is not the kind of environment that we want to create here at our school. Next, they're embarrassed by the situation. They think, oh, this is so embarrassing. Why is this happening to me? What did I do to make this happen? When that shouldn't be their thought. Their thought should be, I don't deserve this. I need to tell someone so that it stops. And then they're also afraid that it's going to get worse if they tell someone. That if they tell someone, their harasser is going to be harder and harder on them. And that's not okay. So finally, what do you do if you're being sexually harassed? The first thing I want you to do is I want you to write everything down. Whatever the person is doing to you, write everything that they're doing to you down and when it happened with a date and a time. Because if this eventually goes to a legal battle, you have some really important information to use in a legal case. But before you go tell a trusted adult, I want you to tell the person to stop. Confront the person and say, hey, will you stop doing this? Because this gives the harasser a fair chance to stop in the case that they do not know that they're harassing you. A lot of times when consent is not clearly communicated, someone can be doing things that they think are okay that you are uncomfortable with. And when you tell them to stop, this gives them a chance to correct their behavior and to be remorseful. Now, if they don't stop a couple days after you've asked them to and they keep doing it, that's when you go tell someone. Go to a trusted adult, whether that's your parent or another family member or someone you just trust, and tell them what's going on. And they will hopefully do something about it. But if they don't do something about it, bring it to a teacher, a counselor, a principal, and tell them, because everyone that works at a school is a mandated reporter. And being a mandated reporter means that you always have to go tell the appropriate authorities, whether that's Child Protective Services, the Sheriff's Department, whatever, what is going on when someone is being sexually harassed, assaulted, abused, any of those things, okay? So confidentiality is important to members at the school, but we always have to make sure that we are keeping our students safe. So we have to report things like this. So come and tell a teacher, counselor, administrator what's going on so that we can help you, okay? And finally, I want you to remember that harassment is never the victim's fault and the victim is never to blame, okay? Everyone deserves to live a life free of sexual harassment. They're free to wear what they want and behave the way they want and say the things they want, but they need to do so appropriately. And if someone is not being appropriate with you and is sexually harassing you, you need to come tell someone, okay? I am here. Your other counselors are here. So if something's going on, tell us so that we can help you, because that is what we want to do here at the school. We want to be advocates for you to make sure that you're safe and thriving and so that you know that you are loved, okay? So thank you guys for another great lesson from the Office of Student Services Media Library. I can't wait to see you again. Go Bearcats.
Thank you for watching another digital lesson from the Office of Student Services Media Library. And don't forget, it's a great day to be a Paint Valley Bearcat.